What's going on, my boys? It's Nick coming at you on the channel today with the ultimate spice. I bring to you today Myutant Ghoti. Ghoti is a brand new TCG exclusive archetype that premiered in Power of the Elements that just came out. And the moment I read all of the Ghoti cards, I instantly couldn't help but think that they would jive extremely well with Mutant and how the deck inherently plays. Ghoti, or fish as apparently it's pronounced, but for the purposes of this video I'm going to continue to call them Ghoti, like to be banished, or they have generic synergy with being banished. And when I sat down and thought about how I might apply that to something, it hit me like, at first I was thinking Metaphys. And then, after reading some of the Ghoti cards, it's like, no, it could work, but in the grand scheme, it doesn't work that well. And then obviously, like, everyone was uploading videos about Ghoti and, some of the combos and whatnot. And it got me thinking. I was like, well, if Ghoti want to be banished, what better way to banish them consistently than by using the mutant cards? Since the mutants banish cards for cost. Even if the mutants get negated, you're still banishing these Ghoti cards, which will allow them to trigger on the following standby and revive themselves from the banish zone. So I thought I would get a little 5-head and big brain and kind of mesh the two themes together. And the funny thing about it is that the themality is actually there. Mutants are loosely based off of the theme. They're a mutated alien life form from space. And obviously Ghoti are fish from space, technically. So the themality's there. I just thought it was cool. Ghotis are water. The mutant starters are water. I was like, you know what? I think I can cook something up that features both of these and have it work quite well. And today, I finally want to showcase it to you guys on the channel. So for those of you who are new to the channel, my name's Nick. We do live duel videos, deck profiles, deck discussions, even pack openings sometimes. If those are things that you like, then I encourage you to please smash that subscribe button. We are on our way to 500 subs. I cannot get there without your guys' help. And if you want me to continue bringing you really cool and unique deck profiles like this, then I encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into this profile and basically talk about how this all comes together. Because on a surface level, you would read the cards and think that there really isn't that much synergy, but once you dive really into the nitty-gritty, there actually winds up being a ton of synergy, and we are here to showcase that to you guys today. So, of course, we're going to start off with our Mutant Engine, or package. We're playing triple copies of Mutant MO5 as our starter, and triple copies of Mutant ST46 as our mutant starters of choice. Sorry, guys, let me get these cards into frame. So Mutant MO5 and Mutant ST46 are very, very cool. In the case of Mutant MO5, upon normal or special summon, he lets you add a mutant monster from the deck to your hand, except a copy of himself. And then Mutant ST46 effectively does almost the same thing in the sense that when it's normal or special summoned, you can add a mutant spell or trap from the deck to your hand. Now, both MO5 and ST46 have identical secondary effects. And those effects are, you can tribute this card, then banish one card from your hand or face-up field, semicolon. So the tributing of themselves and the banishing of any card from your hand or face-up field is cost, meaning that even if that effect gets stopped, you still tribute and banish the card of your choice. If it resolves, you can special summon a monster from your hand or deck based on the type of banished card. If it was a monster, you special summon Mutant Beast. If it's a spell, you special Mutant Mist. And if it's a trap, you special Mutant Arsenal. And we'll get into what those do in a bit. But that's how MO5 and ST46 work. They're basically your mutant starters, searching your monsters or spells and traps, and then being able to tribute themselves and banish cards for cost to special the various mutant boss monsters from hand or deck. So they're really, really cool. Adding on to that is 2 copies of Mutant. Still hate this card's name. It was called Mutant Mutator in the OCG. Mutant is basically this deck's extender. If you control a mutant card, keyword there is mutant card. It doesn't specify monster, it just says mutant card. So even if you have a face-up mutant spell or mutant trap, you can special summon the mutant from your hand, which I think is really great, something that the deck needed. Unlike Mutant MO5 and ST46 that have to banish, tribute themselves and then banish a card from your hand or field, Mutant can tribute itself but then banish a mutant card specifically from the hand or the deck to special summon basically either a Mutant Beast, Mutant Mist, or Mutant Arsenal, depending on the type of card banished. So Mutant Mutant's pretty cool, just being a really great extender, and also allowing you to help mitigate some of the cost of summoning your boss monsters by allowing you to banish cards from deck instead of cards that you control or have in your hand. So you get to keep some of your field presence and your hand advantage over your opponent, which is really nice. What's even better though is that MO5, ST46, and Mutant are all level 3 or lower psychic type monsters, meaning that they can all be special summoned off of Emergency Teleport, which is still currently at 3 copies. So that just gives you an insane amount of access to your starters and enablers, being able to help you amass your board of your bosses, which we will be getting into shortly here. So moving past that, we are on 2 copies of Mutant Beast. Let's put them here like this. So 2 Beast, 1 Mist, and 1 copy of Arsenal as our mutant boss monsters of choice. Now, most people tend to run 1 Beast, 1 Mist, 1 Arsenal. I still think that's very incorrect, especially now that we have cards like Mutant. You want to summon Beast because Beast is the easiest one to summon, given that most decks are comprised of monsters most of the time, and Beast is the one that you can special summon from hand or deck when a monster does get banished. And each one of these mutant bosses can only be special summoned by the effect of a mutant card, so there's no cheating them out by either means or anything like that. Beast cannot be targeted by monster effects. Mist can't be targeted by spell effects, and Arsenal cannot be targeted by trap effects, so I think that's pretty cool. Each one has various forms of protection. Beast, basically, they all kind of function somewhat similarly, meaning that in order for you to activate their on-field effects, you need to banish... As a quick effect, you can banish a card from your hand or the field as cost, and then they each do something different. In the case of Beast, when your opponent activates a spell card or a spell effect, quick effect, you banish a card from hand or field to negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. So he's a spell negate and banish, which is really cool. Mutant Mist states when a trap card, your opponent activates a trap card or a trap effect, quick effect, you can banish a card from your hand or field to draw 2 cards. So that's really, really great against your trap focus matchups like Eldritch. And then Arsenal is really cool. Basically, when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish a card from your hand or field as cost and target a monster on the field, any monster on field, mind you, and banish it. And then Arsenal, Mist, and Beast all have effects that trigger when they're destroyed by an opponent's card. In the case of Arsenal, you get to target a banished mutant spell and add it to hand. In the case of Mist, you get to target a banished mutant monster and add it to hand. And in the case of Beast, you get to banish or target a banished mutant trap and add it to hand. So these are your mutant bosses. You have a spell negate, basically like a pot of greed for your trap matchups, and just a generic target to banish, which I think is very, very unique. Keep in mind that all the mutant bosses are quick effects with their effects, and they also still banish for cost, just like the small mutants do, which is very cool and comes into play when we start diving into the Ghoti section of the deck. But moving on, speaking of the Ghotis, here they are. We are on triple copies of Pace's Light of Ghoti, and then 1 copy of Schiff Fairy of the Ghoti. So we're going to talk about these cards collectively. These are all brand new out of Power of the Elements. They are all Water Attribute Level 2 Fish type tuner monsters. Paces states that you can banish this card you control, that's cost, to special summon any fish monster from your hand except a copy of himself. That's a really cool effect. However, to be honest with you, unless you're playing like Ghoti as its own theme, and you're adding other generically good fish monsters in the deck, right now, there really isn't too many things that Paces needs to summon other than their level 6, which we'll get into in a moment. But I don't even think the level 6 is honestly all that great, aside from him just being the correct level to be able to make level 8 synchros. Hopefully when Ghoti gets their second wave of support, Paces becomes a lot more valuable. But as of right now, what we mainly use these cards for is just banish fodder for our mutant effects. And at first, you would think that that's like, okay, whatever, you're just playing mutant. But you get so much value off of these cards when you banish them, because during the standby phase of the next turn after they were banished, doesn't matter how they were banished, they special summon themselves to your field. Then, as a quick effect, if they were special summoned during the opponent's turn, as a quick effect during the main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon 1 fish synchro monster using this card you control. And there's a whole interesting slew of stuff that you can do with that, and being able to combine that with some of your level 8 mutants obviously allows you to quick sync into a level 10 fish synchro, which Ghoti does have a very strong one. Schiff kind of functions somewhat similarly. The only difference is that he can banish himself from the graveyard to target a fish we control, and it gains 500 attack to the end of this turn. Now that's not that great, but what's cool about that is that Shift can banish itself from grave, and then when it is banished, even by its own effect, during the following standby it'll revive itself, which is pretty cool. But outside of that, Shift and Paces do the exact same thing. Pretty much when they're banished by any means, they special themselves during the next standby phase. Now, if it's the opponent's turn when that happens, then they allow you to quick synchro into a fish synchro monster. However, if it's your turn, there's no restriction on what you can and can't sync into. So again, you can play around with a lot of different stuff in this deck, and I just think that the new Ghoti cards pair quite well with Mutant overall, and allow for some pretty cheeky things. But moving on, 2 copies of Enoch, Sentry of Ghoti. This is the level 6 Ghoti monster I was talking to you guys about. It's, as of right now, it's okay. I feel like this card will get much better once Ghoti gets their second wave of support out of Darkwing Blast. But pretty much, if this card's normal or special summoned, you can target one of your banished level 4 or lower fish monsters and special summon it in defense position, but its effects are negated. Then you can banish a fish monster from your hand or face-up field to add a Ghoti trap from your deck to your hand. Now that's a pretty good effect, but right now there's only one Ghoti trap that we can add, so hopefully we get, again, more support in the upcoming set. But that's pretty much what Enoch does. As of right now, he's just okay. The only reason why we really play him is just because he's level 6. So with him and any of the Ghoti monsters, that allows us to make level 8 synchro plays, which is pretty crucial. But moving on to our hand trap of choice in the main deck, it is triple copies of Dimension Shifter. Again, mutants don't mind if their stuff gets banished, and quite frankly, neither do Ghotis. And what better way to play one of the most powerful hand traps in the format right now? Because D-Shifter completely hoses Tearlament, and Sprite struggles against Shifter as well. So if you can main deck Shifter, then by all means, I encourage you to, because this card alone will steal so many games. So triple copies of Shifter, just having a quick effect Macro Cosmos at will for basically 2 whole turns is pretty nice. But that's it for the monsters, guys. Now we're moving into the spells. 2 copies of Mutant Evolution Lab. This card is actually really great because when it's activated, you can special summon one of your level 4 or lower mutant monsters that's in your hand or that's banished to your field. So that's really nice. Then all mutants you control gain 100 attack for each of your banished mutant cards with different names. And then once per turn during your main phase, you can place a mutant monster from your hand on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, draw 1 card. That's mainly for if you draw like the high level mutants and they're kind of like garnets or bricks in your hand. You can at least mulligan them back in deck for a free draw with the field spell. So that's pretty cool. So just 2 copies of that. Keep in mind the field spell is searchable off of Mutant ST46. 1 copy of Mutant Fusion. This card by itself isn't that great. What makes it great is if your opponent activated a card or effect this turn, then you can fusion summon a mutant fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your hand or field. And then you can also use up to 1 monster each from deck or graveyard as fusion material as well. So effectively, like, this card banishes to fuse from hand or field, but if your opponent activated a card or effect this turn, then you can use up to 1 material each from deck and graveyard, almost making it like a shut-off fusion, a miracle fusion combined into 1. So that's pretty strong as far as that's concerned. Then we're on triple copies of Emergency Teleport. Why? Because all of our mutants happen to be level 3 or lower psychics, and Italy can summon them, and we can extend through disruption, hand traps, and whatnot. Italy is absolutely cracked in this list. And then moving on, we are on 2 copies of Moray of Avarice. This is brand new out of the Power of the Elements. This is to pair nicely with our Ghoti cards. Basically, it allows us to banish a face-up fish, sea serpent, or aqua monster we control to then draw 2 cards. I wish you could banish them from hand and it didn't specify that you had to control it, but honestly, since the Ghoti special themselves for free anyway, that's not too bad of a restriction, and you get a free pot of greed for your troubles, and then on the next turn, the Ghoti comes back to your side of the field anyway. So 2 copies of that. 1 Called by the Grave, 1 Gold Sark, obviously. Called by just to help stop hand traps. Gold Sark just because we can pretty much banish almost anything we want, and it's usually good, because if you banish the low-level mutants, the field spell can summon them from the banish zone on activation. If we banish a high-level mutant, we can actually use that as fusion material with Mutant Cry, something we'll get into shortly, to shuffle it back and fuse. Or if we banish a Ghoti, then on the next standby, it'll summon itself anyway. So Gold Sark is insane in this list. But that's it for the spells, guys. Now moving on to the traps. I spoke about Mutant Cry briefly, but here it is. Mutant Cry, think of it like a Tri-Brigade Revolt. This allows you to fusion summon a Mutant Fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling the materials from among the cards on your field, in your graveyard, or your banish pile. Insanely strong card. Like, being able to fuse in your opponent's turn is absolutely awesome, and especially when you get to recycle all of your material for the cost, which is insane. Then we're on 2 copies of Mutant Expansion. Think of this like an archetype emergency teleport. Basically, when you activate it, you can either add to your hand or special summon a level 4 or lower mutant from deck. And then it has an added benefit of if a level 8 or higher mutant you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. So 2 copies of that. 1 copy of Mutant Clash. Think of this like an archetype infinite impermanence when it's activated. And then while it's face up on the field, since it's a continuous card, every time a level 8 or higher mutant destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you get to draw a card. So as a 1 of, it's fine. Then we're on triple copies of Infinite Impermanence as our next hand trap of choice in the main deck. Between D-Shifter and this, I think these 2 are probably some of the best hand traps you can be mainboarding right now this format. Just being extremely strong, Imperm being able to activate it like on turn 0 from your hand is obviously really nice too. Then we're on 2 copies of Ghoti Chain. This is the only trap card in the Ghoti theme right now. Hopefully, like I said, they get more support in the future. But this allows you to banish a face-up fish you control as cost, to then special summon a Ghoti monster that's banished in your hand, deck, or graveyard with a different original name than the monster banished to activate this card, but banish that other card when it leaves the field. So you banish a fish monster you control to special summon a Ghoti from basically anywhere with a different name. So pretty cool as far as that's concerned. And then for the last 2 cards we main deck, again, this deck list is at 44 cards, is 2 copies of Draco Utopian Aura. This is a brand new card out of Power of the Elements. A counter trap on top of it. Basically, when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you can negate the activation, and if you do destroy that card, then you can apply the following effect. You can banish a monster from your hand, and if you do, special summon the monster that was destroyed and sent to the graveyard by this effect to your side of the field, but negate its effects. So, in other words, it's kind of like a solemn, like strike slash... yeah, kind of like Solemn Strike, I would say, without the life point payment. But the added benefit is that you get to banish a monster from hand. And again, in Mutant or Ghoti, we don't care about doing that. In some cases, that actually like helps us. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, we can special summon the destroyed monster to our side of the field, albeit its effects are negated. But think about it, like, let's say your opponent has Baronne on the field, they activate Baronne, you can chain Draco Utopian Aura. Since it's a counter trap, they can't respond with any other spell speed 2 effects. You destroy the Baron, negate it, and then you special summon it to your side of the field while also banishing a card out of your hand. Granted, the Baron is, when it's summoned to your side of the board, is negated as well, but it doesn't matter. You just got a free 3k beater, and you outed their Omni-Negate. And then you also got to banish a card from hand. Hopefully it was a Ghoti, or even if it was a Mutant, that's like still like free real estate. So I think this card in this deck list is pretty strong at 2. But that wraps up the main deck, guys. Now we're going to dive into the extra deck real quick. 2 copies of Synthesis, 1 Ultimus as our mutant fusions of choice. Synthesis is really nice, being able to, if it's fusion summoned, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. Keep in mind, we usually fusion summon this during the opponent's turn through Mutant Cry. Also, when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can activate this effect. For the rest of this turn, this face-up card is unaffected by the effects of an opponent's cards of the same type, whether that be monster, spell, or trap, as that activated card. And then if this fusion summon card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can add one of your banished mutant cards back to your hand. So really cool as far as that's concerned. And then Ultimus, think of him like a better version of Invoke Mechaba. He's an Omni-Negate by banishing the appropriate mutant card from hand, field, or grave. So if your opponent activates a spell, you banish a mutant spell from hand, field, or grave to negate that activation and banish that spell. On a 3500 beater, and if he gets destroyed by an opponent's card, you get to target 3 mutant cards that are banished and add them back to your hand, as long as they're different types, being monster, spell, trap. So that's it for the mutant fusions. They're very strong and a lot of fun once you get them on the field. Now moving into our synchros, we're on 1 copy of Ascan, the Bicorn Ghoti. This is a brand new level 8 synchro for Ghoti. Generic level 8 synchro, by the way. If it's synchro summoned, you can target a fish monster you control and a card your opponent controls as cost and banish them both. Keep in mind, Ascan can target himself. Then if this card is banished, you can banish a fish monster from your grave to then special summon this card back to your side of the field. So really cool. 1 copy of White Aura Whale. Just as another really powerful fish synchro that we can summon, requiring a water tuner and a 1+ non-tuner water monsters. When this card is synchro summoned, you can destroy all of your opponent's attack position monsters. This card can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase, and if this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage as well. Then if this card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to your graveyard, you can banish 1 other water monster from your grave to special this card back, and if you do, it's treated as a tuner. Really insane level 8 synchro. Then we're on one copy of Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Really awesome level 9 Synchro Monster. And then we're on 2 copies of Ghoti of the Deep Beyond. Again, this is the Ghoti level 10 Synchro Boss Monster that you can summon with Paces or Shift during the opponent's turn as a quick effect. This card is absolutely nuts. The original attack of this card becomes 500 times the number of banished monsters. If this card is synchro summoned during your opponent's turn, you can banish all cards on the field. It's a complete banish field wipe. Then, during the standby phase of the next turn after this card was banished from the monster zone, special summon this banished card. Really powerful card, just being able to sweep the entire board, and then it'll come back on the next standby with X amount of attack, probably a lot. But really strong as far as that's concerned. Then we're on one copy of Baronne de Fleur as our other level 10 synchro. Keep in mind that the Ghoti don't prevent you from synchro summoning into anything as long as you're synchroing on your own turn. They only lock you into fish synchros if you're synchroing during the opponent's turn. So one copy of Baron obviously is a really strong generic level 10. Then we're also playing one copy of Trishula Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier because this deck can also make this card. This card is absolutely nuts. Just when it's synchro summoned, you banish up to 3 cards the opponent controls. And then if this card gets destroyed, you get to special summon the original Trishula from your extra deck or graveyard. Its attack becomes 3,300, and then you have the attack of any face-up monsters your opponent currently controls and negate their effects. Absolutely broken. But moving on, we're on one copy of Dingirsu because your mutants boss monsters are level 8s, and if you can get multiple out, which isn't too hard to do, you can make Ding and just like non-target, non-destroy, send something away, or also protect your back row with Ding's secondary effect. And then moving on to the links, we're on one copy of Anima. We play this because Mutant is a level 1 monster, and the opponent probably won't expect us to make an Anima and steal something if their zone placement's not careful. One Area the Water Charmer, one Abyss Keeper as our like water generic link 2s we can play. Abyss Keeper is really strong as well. Having a nice effect to special summon a fish from hand, and then also he can target a fish monster we control and a card the opponent controls and banish those cards as well, which is really hilarious. And then for the last extra deck slot is one copy of Sprite Elf. Sprite Elf is actually really insane, given that it can be made with any 2 monsters, including a level rank / link 2. Keep in mind, all the Ghotis are level 2s, and Mutant MO5 is a level 2. So you can make this card easily with either of those. And then Sprite Elf allows you to special summon any level 2 monster from your graveyard as a quick effect. So if you special summon Mutant MO5 in the opponent's turn, obviously you get a search. But if you special summon any Ghoti during the opponent's turn, the Ghoti don't care how they're special summoned during the opponent's turn. Just as long as they were special summoned during the opponent's turn, you have the ability to quick sync on their turn, which I think is absolutely cracked. So Sprite Alpha obviously helps facilitate that and is pretty strong in testing. I will say that there is a lot of flexibility with this extra deck. You don't necessarily have to play exactly what I'm running. Feel free to tinker with it, but this is what I came up with thus far, and it's worked out quite well. I'm not saying that this is the best optimized extra deck. I'm sure that after doing vigorous amounts of testing, you may have some different opinions, or based on how your format looks at your locals. But as of right now, I think this is really strong and very, very playable as it sits. But real quick before we wrap things up, we'll go through the side deck briefly. And again, tailor the side deck to your liking based on what you see at your locals. If you think that you need to run something else on the side, then by all means go for it. But in my side deck, I choose to run triple copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit as our secondary hand trap of choice. Ghost Ogre is actually pretty good this format, and it's also a psychic, which we can summon off of Itali, which is pretty cool. But then we're on triple copies of Dark Ruler because, again, like the way the format is right now, you're like going second. Board breakers are just, you need to have them. So Dark Ruler is pretty much the best card for that. Then for your back row heavy matchups, we play Galaxy Cyclone. Really strong card. Unfortunately, it's been seeing a spike in price due to Tier Element because it does have a really nifty graveyard effect, and allowing you to banish it from grave to pop another spell trap. But again, that's what we're running. And then 2 copies of Blizzard. Really, really cool, again, to stop the opponents like going second board breakers like Droplet or Dark Ruler. You can go Blizzard, target those cards, and then bounce them back to hand, negating their effects, and they can't be activated again this turn, which is pretty strong. And then we're on triple copies of Evenly Matched as well. Again, like going second board breakers are very prevalent this format. And then the last card in the side, is the 1 copy of Macrocosmos. Again, because it hurts every other top tier deck right now, and our deck simply just doesn't care if our stuff gets banished. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that deck profile. Like I said, I thought it was pretty unique, and hopefully you guys think so too. As far as I know, no one's really considered pairing Ghoti with Mutant, but after doing testing, it works out extremely well. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys want to see a test hand or combo tutorial video for this, or if you'd like to see a live duel video as well with this deck. So with that being said, guys, again, thank you so much. Feel free to smash that subscribe button. Please help me get to 500 subs. I promise I won't disappoint you guys with content. And yeah, stay cool.